welcome back to another episode of The Black Circle. I'm so glad that you could join us once more. And today I have Lize Okoh joining us. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
So, Liz, you're an accomplished photographer and writer with a penchant for storytelling and wanderlust. Yeah. Amazing. So your story starts in Lagos. Can you tell us a little about those early years and how it shaped your passion for storytelling?
Yeah, so growing up in Lagos for me was really fun, really interesting. I think it was a childhood where storytelling was sort of just part of the culture. So we'd either watch movies with friends and neighbors, or stories from ages ago passed down, and sometimes they're scary, scary stories, but they're really just or even superstitious stories. So there was a lot of that. And I remember there was this, I think today we'll call it a series where it was called Tales by Moonlight. And it's almost like gathering of children around a very big tree. And then it's once upon a time, and then the story will carry on that way. So I sort of grew up really loving storytelling and just fictional characters, but usually the ones where there's a meaning or there's something to learn. So I grew up with that. And so in terms of my personal journey then as an artist, I think when I was much younger, I didn't quite realize I had a talent for storytelling, or I could be a creative person. It was just things I enjoyed doing. So I had a notebook where I would write stories, or when I went on trips, I'll write about the trips. It's day one, we did this, day two. But I always just kept it to the side, and it was something I did for myself and didn't really share or show with anyone. I never thought it was really good enough for best of the writing. And with photography as well, I found an old camera at home when I was 14 years old, and I just wanted to use it to document what was going on in my life. And last day of schools, I would take pictures, because I just had this idea that one day when I'm really old and retired, I'll just have a catalogue and albums filled with pictures and memories, things I probably wouldn't remember at that time. So that was my thinking when I picked up photography. But then along the journey, moving to London, going to university, somewhere along the line, I began to really grow my passion for it and realize I could actually, make a career out of it. So for me, it was a really slow burn journey.
Right.
Where I am today.
Yeah. Because again, let's go back to university. That's what brought you to London originally, right? And
kind of, but not really. So my mom had gotten married and moved here. So it's actually coming to join my mom that really brought me here, not university. And then just as you do, carry on with your life. So I went to sixth form, and then afterwards went on to university.
And it wasn't to study photography or writing?
Not at all. It was to study psychology and sociology. And when I actually look back, I kick myself, because when I was doing sixth form college, I had friends who was learning photography and design. And for some reason, at that point, I had a camera and I was just taking pictures. But for me, it was just fun and just documenting. I didn't see myself as an artist. So I was just this is just a hobby I do. And I remember really thinking, because one of the friends I modeled for actually, so I loved being in front of the camera, which is what actually inspired me to pick up a camera.
So you liked being in front of the camera?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And secretly, I think it was that passion of wanting to be in front of the camera that made me hold the camera. So it was okay, I take pictures around, and then I can give someone the camera to take pictures of me as well. And so for some reason, though, when I was in doing my A-levels, I remember thinking, it's too late to learn. I'm too far gone now. Because joining, I realized, people wanted to study those at A-levels. They had a portfolio or a book they could show. And because I didn't have that, I just thought, I'm too old now. And that's crazy.
I was just about to say, it's a very young age to think that.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. But it just felt these people have been doing it since, secondary school. Mm-hmm. They're carrying on, they could show the grades and the experience they've had. So I just felt, at that point it was too late. So whenever I remember that, I just why did I do that? And I think the environment also contributes to that. So growing up in a Nigerian household, arts are not really you're not really pushed to do it. If you're doing it as a hobby, whatever, but no one's trying to push you to pursue it. So no one around me ever like, encouraged me to like do it. It was more like, oh, science is trying to be like a doctor or a nurse.
It's very typical, isn't it? Like you said, it's one of those law or medicine or anything in the creative vein is a little bit like, oh, there's some suspicion around that.
And I think it's like, how will you like sustain yourself? How can you make a living out of it? Why don't you follow a tried and trusted path that can take you to some sort of financial stability?
And so coming back to your time here, and you're now in London, I will say, I like to look at not the disparities, but the differences. So your work explores social themes around the diaspora. And as someone who's experienced life in both Lagos and in London, what's been a couple of comparisons or takeaways for like the Nigerian culture?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting when I think about Nigerian culture here in the UK. It's definitely evolved and, more people embracing it. It wasn't the case when I first moved here at 17 years old. It was almost, and I understand it because, so I'm very much interested in acculturation attitudes, which I studied in sociology right from A-levels and then university. And it's all about, people who migrate to a new country, how they sort of like integrate themselves into the society. So we have people who integrate because they take on their own culture and the culture of the new place. But we do have people who assimilate because they just want to like really fit in. So they let go of their own culture and just stick to the new culture. So when I moved here, this was in 2007, there was much more of that sort of assimilation, at least in the public. I think, people of Nigerian heritage, they pretty much, knew about the culture at home. But when they would come out, it was almost like, to assimilate in the British way of life, that was almost stripped away. And but for me, thinking I'll be able to like, find people I could relate with and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. These people are like making fun of their parents' accent. I'm like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
If they're doing that to their parents, me, a stranger, I'm in trouble, And it was trying to then integrate and find my way and how I could fit in with like, not only like the British-Nigerians, but like then the wider British society as well. So there was that I guess disparity years ago, but I think the entertainment industry and social media really have really opened the doors and like the eyes to what actually happens back on the continent. So people feel like prouder, they feel braver to say, no, I'm Nigerian, like we're cool, we're dope, things are happening. So I think in terms of those comparisons, that's what sort of, for me, almost like an observer, someone who has lived in Lagos and moved to London, I've been able to really see that transition and people like, embracing their cultural foods.
Yeah.
I feel like years ago, people would never want to talk about eating soups like egusi or like amala. But now everyone's like, talking about it, saying it's their favorite meal. So I like that because it almost feels like now you can be your full self. You don't have to hide parts of yourself.
Be a bit more authentic with it.
Yeah,
it's great. I've definitely seen the shift over the years, and again, as you said, it touches on social media connecting us a bit more and dispelling some very silly set stereotypes, honestly. And encouraging travel, and a lot of people now, like before, I'd never want to go back home, and now like everyone's like, when are you going to Nigeria?
Even non-Nigerians are like, oh, that's in December, we have to go. I'm like, oh, okay.
Exactly. I love the growth and where we're heading. And what do you think we need to do to kind of sustain that attitude and that love for culture?
Yeah, I think there's sort of like we're beginning to bridge more. So before, I think there was that sort of like gap in between where people on the continent thought one thing about people in the diaspora, and in diaspora thought something else as well. And it's that like, where do I belong? I don't really belong here, but then back home they think I'm also like a bit of a foreigner. But I think with more people traveling back home, and I guess with more of that like really finding where finding themselves and finding how they fit, because truthfully, there will be differences if you're raised somewhere else. But I think the more there is sort of these programs and more people are going back, but not just for like the party, strip stuff, like more that impactful and more purposeful work. I think that would even, make the bridge much more stronger.
Absolutely. And you touched on that, just saying, about being a bit more impactful. I think there is a responsibility for us to how do we improve the situation, not just take. And that's been my kind of fear with this whole kind of like diaspora and, giving Americans citizenship and things like that. What are we putting back in? And so, I think that, people need to be mindful.
Yeah, and also careful with the sort of ways we go back as well.
Yes.
So we're not then almost like second wave of colonialists.
Absolutely.
Thinking you're better than like the people who live there. But how do you, if there's like an educational or knowledge gap, how do you like empower and upskill people back home as well? So they also have that autonomy and power to like, grow themselves. And it's not just like, oh, they don't do it well, we're going back to like make it better. And then you lose people there as well.
Agreed, 100%. I also think there's a bit of an attitude of people who want to feel, what's the word, a bit more upwardly mobile than what they are here.
Yeah.
So, obviously your money goes a bit longer, stretches further over there. And again, it's just like, right, how do we ensure that it works for everybody?
Yeah, I think there has to be balance and it needs to be really thought well.
Absolutely. So your work, your non-fiction and your fiction writing taps into very different themes. And so can you explain a little on the differences, and is there ever a preference for one over the other?
Yeah, I think in terms of the differences with my non-fiction, it tends to then be things from my personal experience, so just reimagining things from my childhood and now realizing how they've gone on to impact me as an adult. So as I grow older and I think about some of the sacrifices my parents, grandparents made, it starts to link into like, I feel like the way I am as well, and how I just take on my identity. So that sort of has tended to be my fiction so far in terms of writing. And then the non-fiction is just, I use it almost as a tool actually to have conversations about societal issues and things I just want to broach and want people to think about and want to explore with the stories I'm telling.
So what's the process for you when you're writing? How do you kind of pull these stories out, and what's...
Yeah. So it starts with, I guess, the idea. And for me, as someone who studies the social sciences, I'm very aware of like what's going on in society and very observant on how like our culture, our norms and like attitudes affect, personal behaviors and traditions as well. And so for example, the second book I'm writing is sort of about immigration, and it's just looking at how that actually affects real life people and the sort of like, so you move from one country to the other, the sort of like welcome you receive, the jobs that are available, the education, and how those sort of things and how you're perceived in that country goes on to affect, your experience of life and you even having the ability to go back home. So I'm really wanting to have discussions about, all these things, but then I create these characters and these storylines and plots that make it interesting as well. I feel like instead of writing a thesis, I write in a fictional way where it's more digestible and interesting, and it takes you on a journey, but for those who are quite conscious, you can read the undertone and sort of learn what I'm trying to like talk about as well.
I like that. It's more, like you said, it's more digestible and you're bringing a bit more imagination into it and colour and all of that. And that's encouraging for people to engage with. So I like that slant on it. And so that brings us to the returnees. Do you want to just hold it up for the camera? I feel like we need
definitely, my baby.
Brilliant. So give us a synopsis of the book. Here it is, everybody, and some of the inspiration you drew on for it.
Sure. So when you say synopsis, do you want me to read the back or just talk about like a summary?
Yeah, just a summary. Yeah.
Yeah, because it would definitely be shorter than this. So The Returnees is about 3 British-Nigerians who leave London to Lagos. So it's almost like a spin on the head, right? Because there are lots of stories of people migrating the other way from Lagos to London, but they actually, uproot themselves from their lives in London and move back to Lagos for various reasons. And the book covers the first year of them being there and what they get up to and their exploits. And and so one person is on this like healing journey. She's been through a bad breakup and she's just like, screw it, I'm gonna start over and just focus on my career. And through social media, she's really like excited and curious about like the developing fashion industry in Lagos. So she moves back for that reason. Then we have a second character whose parents are just fed up of her. She's like has no direction in life. She's finished university, and she's at that stage where you don't really you've done all the steps, and now university is over. What next?
What next? Yeah, yeah.
And you don't quite know. So her dad, tells her to go back to do a national youth service in the capital city, and so she goes back for that reason. She's not happy about it, but the dad is like, we've had enough, go back and
do something,
learn about life, and see almost like how better off you are. And then the third character is an artist, hasn't quite made it here in the London scene, and because of Afrobeats at that point in time was growing, and people are becoming international, so he decides to take a chance to go back home to work with his cousin to grow his audience and learn more about Afrobeats, and he basically wants to become an international star by all means,
right?
And so he goes back to the birthplace of Afrobeats, so he goes back to Lagos for that reason. And so at some point in the novel they meet, they separate, they meet again, and the book unravels that way.
Curious. Okay, we'll have to have a read of that. So how would you like to evolve your storytelling and your artistry as a writer?
Yeah, as a writer, So I think I'm just starting. If you say as a writer, I'm just starting, and I have a lot more story to tell. So in terms of the evolution of it, I can't speak to evolution right now of my writing career. More of me wanting to explore different social themes that are really I'm really excited to share and talk about in different creative and fun ways. So that's where I see my writing going. And I'm working on a second book, and it's just the time, because I'm also a photographer, so it tends to be quite difficult juggling both at the same time. So it's almost like I have to do one, and then once I'm done with one project, I can pick up another. So the past few years I've been working on my photography projects. I had one project come out this year, Women in the Frontlines, and I'm working on a second one, which hopefully should be exhibited this time next year as well. And so in terms of the evolution of my photography artistry, for me, I would want to go more into mixed media. So not just only the photographs themselves, but also seeing how I can use other tools and materials physically to blend into my portraiture.
Brilliant. And you've just done a great segue for me, because I want to delve now a little bit more into your photography work. And so your passion for photography that was birthed, like you mentioned, in your teenage years in Lagos. And what was the prompt for you to really start investing into it and say okay, I really want to put some time and effort into this and see where I can go with the journey?
Yeah, exactly. So like I said previously, it was just a hobby, just something I did for fun. So I carried on taking pictures even when I went to university on night outs and things like this. And I always said to my friends then, if any of you become really famous or whatever, I have all the pictures to blackmail you with.
Oh, brilliant.
Because I was always the one sticking the camera in your face.
Candid.
Yeah, exactly. And when they're dancing in the corner in the club, I'm click, click.
Or kissing someone or doing something you shouldn't do.
Yeah, just fun pictures, because I just wanted to capture lots of memories. So I kept on doing that, and I think it was through my writing grew first, and I became more confident in my abilities and realized I'm actually quite good at writing. And then I was like, so what about if I take photography seriously as well then? And so what I didn't mention is during university I then went on to get a writing job, and I was mind blown, because I was for a company to pay me to write, my family, you don't know me, you owe me nothing, but you're paying me to write. I must be doing something.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that sort of gave me that confidence to dig deeper and start exploring more into my artistry. And then I decided what, I should take this photography thing seriously. And at the time I had started writing to Returnees as well, but as any author would know, it takes ages to from developing the idea, completing and all of that, and then publishing. It's a really long cycle. And
how long is the cycle? So like you said, from to to publish?
Yeah. So for me, the editing process, so my writing process actually probably the shortest. So it took me 6 months to write. Yeah, it was 4 months intensive, like a full-time job, because I just couldn't do it together with a full-time job. And then I had a break in between. Then I had another 2 months where I left my job at the time, concentrated on the book again, and then finished. So together was 6 months. And then looking for a book deal, trying to get like an agent, that takes a while as well. But luckily for me, I had enrolled into like a scheme by Hachette, and it's the Future Bookshelf. And with that, I didn't need an agent. They just wanted to look for, underrepresented voices. And so through that, I got a book deal, which is amazing. And so from getting that book deal, it then took like a year to then edit the book with the editor. So they go through, no one had seen my work at that time. I was the only one who had like ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't show anyone. So having someone read it for the first time and like, give that great feedback and understood, what I was trying to say was amazing. And so working with my commissioning editor for a year, and then it took another time to then get it published, but then 2020 happened, so we had to push back the publication date. So it can take up to a year from editing to publishing.
Right. It's so amazing the amount of guests that I've had now who have gone back to that period of 2020. And it's either been a period where great ideas are birthed, or it's been a period where they've had the chance to stop, reflect, and gather, themselves and the things that they want to do. But everybody, something happens in 2020 for everyone. It seems like something pivotal.
Yeah. I think I call it actually the marker of a generation. I think it was such a pivotal time in history in our generation. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else is going to like top that, because...
Oh, God, I hope nothing serious.
Exactly.
Marker of a generation. I really like that. Yeah, it's so true. So let's go on to, you've just finished your solo exhibition, and you mentioned it very briefly earlier on, Women on the Front Lines, talking of the pandemic, which is celebrating the incredible service women during the pandemic. Can you guide us through your thought process of putting it all together and what you want the public's takeaway to be?
Yeah, so Women on the Front Lines for me was, I guess, is the empathetic part of myself, trying to put myself in like these women's shoes and trying to understand what they went through at the time. So as we all know, 2020 was like, a really crazy time, not just for the virus itself, but there was lots of like, social upheaval, things happening in the Black community in the US, in the UK here. And then I'm Nigerian. There was also, 20th of October where people were just killed. Until today, the government denies that, even though there was live recording of this. And so it was just a really traumatic period. And as a photographer, I couldn't work, so I was mostly at home. And through all of those things happening, there were days where I was just like, what is this world turning into? And I just couldn't do anything. I was just being in bed, and I'm just like, wow. But I then at some point realized, I was like, well, there are people who are still going to work, where you are ordering food, there's someone who is preparing it and there's someone else who is delivering it. You're going to the supermarket. And it was just like walking around and realizing these things. So I go to the supermarket, I have my gloves. I've always had hand sanitizer in my pocket, so that was not an issue. But obviously always, trying to sanitize myself. You pick up something from the shelf and you're like, oh my gosh, you try to clean it off before, putting it at home. But then I'm like, there is, attendants who are coming in contact with hundreds of people every day. How is that for them? Women are mostly the home carers. So they're not just only working, they're having to go home. So how is their family coping as well? How are they able to shield their loved ones from getting, getting any cross-contamination or anything like that? And then if they have older parents, some people have to take care of them. So I just felt it was just all this, burden upon burden, and there was lots of trauma happening as well. And so, I just thought it would be amazing to hear from these women themselves, understand, how they were able to go through that time, what life was like for them, their experiences in the different industries as well, how the different industries cope which, that time, how did they navigate through the crisis? And that's how the idea was born. And so I wanted to do it for like 2021, 2020. I just couldn't, because when things opened, I had to like get back to work, make money, pay my bills and all of that. Oh, then in 2023, I was like, right, if I don't start on this project, it would soon be 10 years past. And so I made a call out. I sent emails to so I'm a boudoir photographer, so I have like a good email list of women. So I sent it out to my mailing list. I posted on social media. I had friends share as well. I also emailed the different unions to also share with like their members. And that sort of got the ball rolling and got people signing up to participate. Yeah, so that was it.
So it's a series of photographs, and like I said, it was an exhibition, and we can see this online. And
so currently, so what happened is after after getting the women, I did interviews, and then I did the portrait photo shoot as well with my creative team, and then it culminated to an exhibition which ran from the 1st to the 31st of March.
So very recently.
Yeah,
well done.
Recently.
Yeah.
Ended a few days ago. I had to go and take it down.
Oh,
it went so fast. So that was it. So I do plan to make it into a book in the future. I would love for the exhibition itself to tour around the country. So if there are any galleries out there or curators who would love to put this on in their like communities and local spaces and galleries, hit me up. I'd love to do that. So for now, it's like not showing anywhere, and I'm not really wanting to put it online, because I think there's a thing with the digital age we are in now where photographers work on project, or even just artists, and it's like the only way to show it is just to post it on like Instagram. And I'm like, for me, it's not like content for people to just double tap and move across. I'm trying to like have a conversation. I'm trying to like get people to think deeper about this. So I think there's a context and there's a place that allows you to do that properly, and it not just being about the likes and comments. So I would love for it to go into galleries, but it's not like online anywhere. And once I'm done with the second part of the project, which I'm starting this week, then I would like to make it into like a photography book, and then hopefully that can be in libraries, because I really want even generations from now to be able to like see the women who held the country up, and people who played like a really significant role during one of the toughest battles.
Give them their flowers, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. That's one of the things I said. Give them their flowers now while they're alive, because I've been on projects where it's like we're honoring heroines from the past. It's great they're finally being recognized, so like they're way long gone.
But we need it now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it was so amazing having the women at the exhibition launch. There was a panel talk as well, and they were so happy and like, oh, thank you for inviting us to this. I was like, no, you're amazing. You need to be celebrated. I should be thanking you for your work. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said about, and you was touching on, you don't want it to be online and you don't want it to be reduced to like likes on Instagram. I think there's something about the physical space and being present and in the moment and really absorbing your creation, your artistry. I don't think it's not the same through the phone, It's really not. So I like that you're kind of gatekeeping it a little bit and saying like, go out, experience life, touch grass, do something. So through your photo, through taking these pictures of these women, were there any stories that stood out to you or any moments?
Yeah, definitely. They all went through different things, and it was just interesting. I think what really came out of it was how they felt afterwards. A lot of them felt underappreciated. Some of them felt invisible. It was like, oh, they were called, essential workers during that period. And now it's just like, yeah, whatever. And I think the pandemic really showed us who really, plays the important roles in society, right? Because if they had all decided, well, no, I want to like keep myself safe as well, I'm not going to work, what would have happened?
Yeah, the country would have come to a complete standstill.
Exactly.
Truly, yeah.
Yeah, so the stories was really interesting. So there was one of the ladies was a bus driver, and she was saying how due to the restrictions and the rules, they had a number of people they could let on the bus in order to allow enough spacing and stuff. And so when that number would get met and she had to like tell people still waiting at the bus stop, oh, sorry, you know, no one else can come in, they would get really mad. People would like hit on the windows. People would stand in front of the bus with their arms crossed. You're not moving, I have to get on. People were like cussing at her, and it was just like, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm trying to get people to work. I can't help it, you know.
Yeah.
The capacity has been met. So there was that as well, which was, not pleasant at all. And then there was like, there was like someone who worked in the intensive care unit and just talking about how all of a sudden they had to work with, so it's more nurses to like a patient than normal. And before, I guess the country got to grasp with the virus and having appropriate like safety measures. So yeah, it was a lot. And then there was a police officer as well who talked about, going into a home where lots of not home, a mental ward where lots of people had COVID, but it hadn't been passed down to her team. So they weren't adequately protected. And then they all came down with COVID. So so there's, I feel like I really did this project because I feel there's a lot to learn. I understand as humans, we turn away from negative situations and we're looking to move forward and better positive outlook, which is great. But I think there's also something to be said about, taking stock, being reflective, seeing what happened in the past, what can you learn from it, what can you do in the future to make things better. And that's sort of what I wanted this project to be about, to actually hear from the people who were on the front lines, their experiences, what they would love to see change, how they would, like to feel seen through this process. So then it helps govern policies and things like that.
Absolutely. And you really are giving a voice to the people who just didn't have a voice at that time. It's so important, honestly. And so I want to go back to your boudoir work. Which is really exciting. So do you want to talk us through that style of photography and what it's all about?
Yeah, so boudoir photography for me is really like trying to empower women to feel more confident in their skin, to embrace their bodies, however shape it takes, and a way to explore your femininity and sensuality as well. I think we're in a society where, women's bodies are almost made as a product to sell products. We're objectified, use it to sell a bikini, use it to sell skin products and all of that. And everyone accepts it. But as soon as a woman wants to find pleasure within herself and wants to take control and, autonomy over her body, then it's like, oh, you're vain, or like, what do you think you are?
It's not accepted, is it? At all? Yeah,
exactly.
So everything's centering around the male gaze. Exactly. And how do we decenter that?
Exactly. And it's like, okay, your bodies are for like what? For male pleasure, for rearing children. But when does my body belong to me?
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I do with my boudoir work, to really help women explore, sides of themselves they probably haven't before. I've had someone say, oh, I've always lived at home. I'm in my 30s now. I don't feel like a woman. I want to do this shoot to really explore my own femininity and my sensuality and just feel more womanly in my body. And why not? So, yeah.
So talk us through the experience. So say I come in to your studio, what's the process? Do I bring my own lingerie? What do you advise people to do?
Yeah, so we start off with a consultation when you inquire, and I sort of find out, what this whole experience means to you and what you're trying to, achieve through doing it.
It's very vulnerable to be so exposed. So just so people know, boudoir is, we're talking about very sexy, sensual lingerie type of thing. So to be in that position in front of strangers, it's quite...
Even people who you think, oh, they must be so body confident,
right?
You find out they're still a bit nervous about particular parts of themselves.
It's an experience. It's a day.
It's really a full pampered treat yourself day. You're not a mom today, you're not a sister, you're not a daughter, whatever, you're just you.
Right.
And you get to have this 5 hours just to yourself.
Beautiful. So it's just that empowering moment for women, and just be okay, tap into that inner siren. And
exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So going back to kind of summing all up, photography and everything, writing, if you could choose one body of work you're most proud of, what would it be? Can you choose?
It's difficult because even though I've had like smaller projects and the women on the front lines is my biggest one in terms of photography so far, I would say maybe the Returnees. Actually, I would choose this because for me, this was me when I took a chance on myself. Because when you hear, when I've listened to some authors' interviews, they talk about how maybe they had been writing since they were younger, they had entered into competitions. They've had like a track record and feedback that shows, they're good at what they can do. They've had these different short stories or things they've written, and then they decide to write a novel. I just literally was like, after university, I was like, you know what, I want to write a book.
And you just did it.
And I just did it. Exactly.
But I feel like it sounds like you wasn't in your head about it.
No.
And you trusted yourself and your talents and your skills, and I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. So I think what I must say is throughout so right from an early age, even before I left Nigeria, I sort of knew. So because in the country, again, when you're doing really well in school academically, they push you to the sciences. So because I was doing well, I was on that vein of the sciences. And so I thought, I'll become a doctor. But even before like my last 3 years, I knew I didn't want to become a doctor anymore. But again, with the culture, you can't tell your parents, I don't want to know what I want to do. No, you can't tell them, I don't want to become a doctor. And it's like, okay, so what do you want to become? And then you say you don't know. They're going to look at you like, what do you mean?
You lost your mind.
Exactly. So it was a secret for the longest time. I never told anyone I no longer wanted to be a doctor because I didn't know what else. So I just moved with the motions of doing the sciences and stuff. So it was when I came to London and did A-levels, then you had to narrow down to like 4 subjects. I was like, okay, crunch time. I'm not interested in chemistry or physics anymore. I can't be bothered. I still loved biology, so I was like, I'm going to do biology. Finally, I had to tell my mom, I'm not going to be a doctor. She's like, okay, what about a nurse? I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to be a nurse either.
Neither.
Yeah. And then, so I was moving with things that interested me. So I was like, I'm very interested in human behavior, observing people. I went to the dictionary. It's psychology. I was like, okay, I'll do psychology. And to appease my mom, I was like, I could be a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, and then Googled like how much do they earn. I was like, yeah, this is what they earn, I'll be fine. So I think that was sort of fine with her at that time. So throughout that period, I was moving with what what interested me, but nothing felt like this is what you could do. This is what a life of purpose could be. But because I was like, I don't know what else. I'm just going to keep moving through the motions. So I really enjoyed doing psychology, especially sociology, because it's all about, society and, the issues and all of that. So it was when I found writing and I realized it wasn't just a hobby. I was good at it and I was getting paid for it. And then I started doing photography and started doing mini projects, sort of just exploring different themes. And again, my passion for it grew. And then everything just crystallized, and it was like, this is it. So I didn't have a reason to keep searching for what that it could be. It's just like, no, this is it. Actually, this is what you were meant to do. Use your work to like inspire and uplift people. And so when I finished university, that's why the idea, although it was crazy, not that crazy, but I was like, I want to write a book, because for me, it just felt that was what I was meant to do. And so it was really like brave to do that.
It was going against what your parents had expectations had for you. It would have had to take bravery to do that.
And it caused issues. I definitely did. But interestingly, I and my mom were talking about this yesterday. And I was like, you didn't support me at the start. She's like, I didn't know when you just said you wanted to write a book. But when you did it, I was like, she did it. And then she like felt like, more confidence in my decision. So I think, I went ahead and did this because for me, it just felt like this is what my talents are. This is what God has given to me. And I can use this to like inspire people.
I love that. Yeah. So what projects are next for 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, so my next project is the second part of the Marker of a Generation project, which is called Mother Resilient. And again, it's the second part, still looking at life during the pandemic. And so this time around, I'm turning my lens to like Black mothers. And I'm looking at women who gave birth during 2020 to 2021, when there was like service restrictions, which meant they couldn't have a companion whatsoever to accompany them during childbirth. So they had to do that all by themselves alone.
Wow.
No one to advocate for them, no one to support them. And knowing the stats about Black women and how we are 4 times more likely to die during childbirth, I just thought that must have been such a really traumatic experience. But that's me not having gone through that process or that experience saying that. So I want to hear from these, women themselves, document their stories, give them an avenue to share and talk about, their experience in that time. But again, to celebrate motherhood. So I'm going to sort of crystallize that with a conceptual photo shoot and just help them feel amazing, feel pretty. Yeah.
I just love how you center women, and all your work seems to be around uplifting, amplifying our voices. So yeah, please keep on doing all that brilliant work that you're doing. So we've come to the end, but I always like to ask my guests about values. So just one word for your professional life and one word for your personal life.
So
so if you think about your personal life and where you are now, what word kind of carries you through? What word do you kind of hold to you? This is what I really value in life right now for me in this moment.
Personal. It's so bad because I need more balance in my personal life. So when I think about values, I think it would be, I guess, a sense of maybe community, I would say. I don't know if that's a value.
Community is definitely a value. Yeah, I would say so.
Because when I think about, especially the last couple of months in being able to achieve, exhibiting women on the front lines, doing it self-funded, by the way, it's not been easy. I tried to apply didn't try. I did apply to different grants and fundings, didn't get any of the ones I applied to. And I was just bent on I had to get this done. And I just believed that, God, who had given me this idea and this talent, would see me through this project. The funds will come in one way or the other. And so I was able to self-fund it. But apart from that, I had people who supported me. So my hair and makeup artist, amazing, who collaborated with me on this project. Some other photographers who helped me behind the scenes. My very good friends who's helped me throughout the process, even on the days. And is there anything you need? And just, making sure, she supported me. And then my mom as well, being so excited and going over and beyond more than what I thought.
Championing you, yeah.
I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, okay. And like I said, we were talking about it yesterday, and I was just I was actually surprised. She's like, what do you mean? You've never done a project like this? I was like, okay, fair enough.
Oh, that's so sweet that she, was able to give you that encouragement in the end. That's lovely.
Yeah, and she sponsored all the refreshments during the opening night. So that was good. So I would say, community, because,
And for your professional life?
And so professional life, I think the value I would say is determination.
Great word.
Yeah, because I think as an artist and where I am now in my journey, in my photography business and entrepreneurship, and I'm at a point where determination has gotten me here. So no one who I know personally has gone before me on this path I'm currently taking. But I was just if this is my talent, if this is, what I can make as a living for myself, I'm going to find a way to make it work. And so it's that determination that has just kept me going. Whenever I fall back, I get myself up, So, yeah.
Wonderful. Great words. Community and determination. Fabulous words. We've come to the end, but if people want to follow your journey or follow your work, where can they view you?
Yeah, so I'm quite a bit active on Instagram, I would say. I'm always in my stories posting something or the other. Okay. So you can, follow me on Instagram, which is Lize Okoh, Lize Okoh. So I'll often most likely post, ongoing things on there. But of course, I do have my website as well, where you can go through my body of work, which is my full name, ElizabethOkoh.com, ELIZABETH, OKOH.com. And if you're a photographer, you're creative listening to this and you would like to learn how to grow a sustainable and profitable business, then you definitely want to check out my YouTube channel where I'm sort of like spilling all the secrets and, the strategies that's enabled me to grow a 6-figure business.
Great stuff. Amazing. Well, guys, that's another episode wrapped up. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And guys, if you want to also follow the Black Circle journey, you can find us on YouTube, the Black Circle Podcast, and on Instagram, the blackcircle.podcast. Until next time, thank you.